we're also going to do some like bar breakdown stuff, I guess, of pop songs, rock songs, alternative indie, that
Hmm.
kind of thing too, because some of it is lyrical and some of it is just giving context and stuff like that to it.
Right.
This week was released. Matchbox 20 has not. It was a huge deal in the 90s and early
It was.
2000s.
Yes, it was.
Um, he they haven't really released a record in 10 years, probably, maybe even longer than that. Um,
Wow.
so I was interested to hear the song is called Wild Dogs Running in a Slow Dream, which is not my favorite title in the world, but that's neither here nor there. Um, it's I was just interested to see where like they have progressed to. Like, I mean, Rob Thomas has relate the singer has released other records since then, but um, I was interested to hear like what they had come up with this time. Is also interesting. We just got finished talking about Nas and Hit Boy's song "The Tide." Rob Thomas is 51 too. I looked it up, so they're about the same. They're in the same age,
Well, I
and
mean, did Matchbox 20 become a thing like around 92, I feel like, or is it before that?
96 ish.
Okay.
96 was Push and 3 a.m. and
3 a.m. Yep.
those songs that um even if the people like don't know it from the names, if I played them for you, anybody who lived through the 90s would recognize the voice. Um like I played the song at dinner last night for my wife who is, my age-ish, and um it was like, do you know who this is? And she's like, Matchbox 20. Like, it was like she said exactly the same thing. Anybody who's grown up in the 90s would recognize Rob Thomas's voice. Like that voice is, it's not a miraculous voice, but it is certainly a very distinctive one. And you hear that and you're like, oh, that's Rob. Yeah. Um, so my opening thoughts about this, for some context purposes, are there used to be a form of like country inflected rock music that has been kind of taken over by country music lately. Um, like in the last 20 years or so, it's been swallowed by like Florida Georgia Line and that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
there's a long tradition in rock music of like Bryan Adams and John Mellencamp and Tom Petty and even Sheryl Crow and Taylor Swift in her younger years. Like it's that kind of song.
Okay.
It feels very much in that tradition. It's like it's it's a trying to reclaim my youth song, which actually fits really nicely with um the Tide too, honestly. I didn't do that on purpose. But it's like Summer of '69 or Jack and Diane or Mary Jane's Last Dance or Free Fallin' or even Born to Run. I mean, any of those songs, it's not any of those songs because those are like the most iconic examples of that lane on the highway, but it's it's in that kind of vein, which is not the same vein that Matchbox 20 was in before, really.
What vein were they in before, in your estimation?
Um, this this song, the Wild Dog song, feels country inflected a little bit. Like there are country songs on the radio that I've heard that I can't name, that I've just heard in the background in the grocery store or whatever, that feel like this song. Is very sounds similar to this. The original Matchbox 20 is more navel gazy, I guess. I mean, the like I want to push you around, yeah, I will. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever been good enough, and I'm a little bit rusty, and I think the truth is going to hurt you. Like it's those kind of lyrics, like it's 3 a.m. I must be lonely. Like those kind of things are sadder, and this song is not sad at all, really. It's a kind of a joyful romp more so than um
Do you think they're trying to keep up with the times on this record?
yeah, I do. Um
I do too.
and that's kind of what it felt like to me. My note at the bottom of this sound says the song sounds, and people are going to think I mean this is an insult, and I don't, but it sounds like you asked Taylor Swift to write a song impersonating a 50-year-old man. Like it's that kind of feel to it. And like I don't mean that as an insult, but
No,
it
it's not.
is that kind of pop-ish song.
So briefly, just to bounce back over
Hmm.
to the hip hop side, when I heard this record,
Hmm.
I'm like, this is why the Nas and hit pairing is so special. Because respectfully, when you're older and you're
Hmm.
trying to keep up and keep pace, no, you need to get you a hit boy.
Yeah.
So when you're making the Taylor Swift like analogy, it's like, no, you're not too far off because although I like this song,
Hmm.
I don't love it because I do know some of their earlier stuff.
Yeah. That was
And
exactly my reaction to it too. Yeah.
and if you know any of their earlier stuff, like 3 a.m. is probably my favorite song from them.
It's such a good song.
It's a great song. And if you've heard them at their best,
Hmm.
and then you hear this, you can hear the effort. It's like, okay, no, 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 trying to modernize and shout out to them,
Yeah.
but not totally working in the way that the Nas hit thing is working.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so when you're saying Taylor Swift, it's like, no, they do need to find them somebody in that vein if
Hmm.
this is the route that they're going to take. Much like Nas reached out to a producer who is about 15 years his junior.
Hmm.
So it's like, no, I can see that there are young hands in the room.
Hmm.
And, maybe just, it could be the wrong young hands. It could just be needing to be more of a process and a synergy. Like the weakest album that Nas and Hit did was the first one
Right.
because they got to get the synergy down. It's hard to come back at 50, 51,
Hmm.
late 40s and be, they went diamond if I'm not mistaken. Not a lot of bands go diamond. Like going diamond is not normal, and so like they were pretty big.
There's a big deal, and they're coming back for a tour this summer too,
Of
which
course,
is
they have to. They're
one of the reasons
releasing
they're releasing the album and so forth and
right.
so on. And a lot of people my age-ish are thrilled. Like people are like a generation before going to see Journey and Motley Crue. Like it's the same. It's like a big. This is like a remembering your youth kind of show. And their songs are fun, and the show will be fun. And like it's not. There's nothing
They've
wrong with
always
it.
been a good energy group.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean about, well, if you're going to update that formula, you got to find somebody that is, and not to go back to Hit too much, like,
Mhm.
probably one of the proudest moments that I've had of being on this podcast here when Hit was like, yeah, I've been watching y'all since 2020. And, it was helping me on going back and listening to the old Nas records to help give him his new sound. I was like,
Oh.
oh, I
I'm
didn't know I
glad
was doing
y'all went like when I heard him say that. I'm like, oh.
right. That was like, I'm doing the interview, but in my mind, it's like everything was exploding on the inside of my mind. And I'm sitting up here like, oh, fuck. But then I think about it, no, that's important. And so
Hmm.
whoever like is putting Matchbox 20 together needs
Hmm.
to be doing what Hit's also providing a formula too. It's not just Nas, because
Yeah.
what Hit is telling you is like, no, I went back and studied the shit that y'all was talking about because, and he said it, he was like, he's from Cali, he's from Inland Empire.
Hmm.
His people aren't playing the same Nas records. And he's right. The Nas records that I heard when I'm living in Cali are not the records that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so there was a whole, and also you got to look at his age.
Hmm.
So he's not acquainted with Illmatic. It was written, I am Nostradamus. He probably like Stillmatic is probably the first thing Hit
Hmm.
probably like really heard. So it's like he probably doesn't know that 90s stuff like that. So when he's hearing us talk about it in Matchbox 20, for the level of group that they are, they need somebody like Hit, somebody that knows their sound, but
Hmm.
is going to go back and study
Yeah.
to update the formula properly
Yeah.
because that's what they need, and they're a worthy enough band of it. I think they were together for about a decade, and it was
Yeah.
one of the better modern day runs that we've had from a band.
Hmm.
Correct? Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
You are.
Big. I remember. No, I was in high
They were
school.
huge deal. Yeah.
They were a big deal. They were probably. I mean, what band would you say was bigger than them when they first came out? Because I would say they were
But
probably
in the mid '90s, like the only, I mean, this is
Nirvana's gone. It's
yeah,
96.
Nirvana's gone by now. Like the bands that are bigger than them now, like they had a nice little pocket, alongside like REM and that kind of thing. REM's second like wave was about what came through then too, um, but they had it wasn't all by themselves, but they were the last of the or one of the last of the real pop rock groups before you hit like Blink 182 and those kind of like the pop punk. And then you had, All Time Low and Sum 41 and like on and on and on and on and on. I mean, there were a bunch of others. So they had like a pocket, not quite to themselves, but like they were a one of one kind of band. And like I'm very sensitive to this because I've heard you talk on According to Hip Hop repeatedly about um how it's not fair to ask Nas to remake Illmatic over and over and over again. So I don't necessarily want them to make, Yourself or Someone Like You, which is their 96 album with 3 a.m. and Push and all of those songs. I don't want them to redo that album. It just it it didn't feel like when I listened to the song like they were updating their sound. It felt like they were trying to make Summer of '69 or like that kind of song.
You take the pieces that were classic, like
Hmm.
Nas sounds classic over break loops and soul samples,
Yeah.
but hit did. You don't have
Right.
to take old shit. Take the pieces that work for the artist.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
whatever was making it work is like what you go pull from and you update the formula. I'm going to bring up Gangstar's album Moment of Truth again. Guru starts off the album and he says, we have certain formulas, but we update our formulas with the times.
Hmm. Yeah. And this is an attempt to do that for Matchbox 20. I'm not I'll have to hear the whole record to know whether this is like the and I will say this also, like, is this a my most favorite song that I've heard in the last year? No. Is it a song that after I've listened to, I've been walking around my house and singing for the last 3 days in my head? Yes. Yes. So it's sticky. Like it does do that for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And that is one of the things that they did very well, and Rob Thomas did with Santana also, which is probably where most, if you don't know Matchbox 20, you still know the Rob Thomas and Santana Smooth song, um, too. It's yeah, in many senses, Wild Dogs are a good metaphor for what he's going for, right? Like, um, you have the wildness, unbridled passion of youth kind of thing going on, but also like hounds of hell kind of chasing you as part of the aging process too. So it's almost like I mean, because the song is about, dancing at night and all the like stuff, partying as a young person, kind of like that's the kind of frame of it. It has to be necessarily filtered through an older person's perspective because it
It,
is an older person delivering it.
it's got
And
that reflective tone in the songwriting of an older person writing it too. That is where the records come together too. It's like, well, this record is some kind of grown up talk too, Because listen, this is a grown up saying this because this is how he starts off. He starts off talking in past tense. We
yeah,
were eyes wide
yeah,
open.
exactly.
It's like, okay, so he's a grown up. Listen, when the world got dark, it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously his world was dark. I mean, you can hear that if you listen to any Matchbox 20 songs, you
Right.
hear he went through some shit for sure. Like, yeah.
But he's actually in a lot of ways recalling the stories of his youth.
Hmm.
Yeah. Think about it. Dancing to a rhythm that felt so hard. You could feel it. You could feel it. It's damn near autobiographical.
Yeah.
He's talking about their run, really.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I want to read this poem too. One of my very favorite poems in the whole history of the world. It's called Jet by a man named Tony Hoagland. The ideas of a person who has come to a certain age in their life, looking back on their life and remembering, like, not necessarily in a nostalgic way, but like you remember I used to be able to do such and such, and now I can't really anymore for multiple reasons. That kind of idea is, and obviously an idea that goes all those other songs that I named, Summer of '69, Jack and Diane, Mary Jane's Last Dance, Free Fall, and all of those songs do that too. Um, this poem also does that. And this is, the English teacher in me, and I wanted to throw this in here because I love the poem and this is my show, so I can. No, or our show, so I can. Anyway, this is called Jet. Sometimes I wish I were still out on the back porch drinking jet fuel with the boys, getting louder and louder as the empty cans drop out of our paws like booster rockets falling back to Earth, and we soar up into the summer stars. Summer, the big sky river rushes overhead, bearing asteroids and mist, blind fish and old space suits with skeletons inside. On earth, men celebrate their hairiness, and it is good, a way of letting life out of the box, uncapping the bottle to let the effervescence gush through the narrow, usually constricted neck. And now the crickets plug in their appliances in unison, and then the fireflies flash dots and dashes in the grass like punctuation for the labyrinthine, untrue tales of sex someone is telling in the dark, though no one really hears. We gaze into the night as if remembering the bright, unbroken planet we once came from, to which we will never be permitted to return. We are amazed how hurt we are. We would give anything for what we have. Such a fucking beautiful poem. It is. But
That's
that, go
that's
ahead, say,
stellar. That's a beautiful ending.
I know, I love that poem. And I wanted to read that because that is the same ethos as this song. Like there is something beautiful that we've lost, I guess,
Mhm.
and that we can never get back. And we can see like glimpses of it here and there sometimes. But
It speaks to the hard decisions of adulthood.
mhm,
When you know more, you tolerate less, and thereby some
yeah,
of the innocence and naivety of life is taken from you.
yeah.
Like, you know the decisions that you have to make. You can see the tough
Mhm,
decisions that you have to make, as opposed to just kind of like blowing through it in your
yeah,
youth. You know,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Hey, y'all, thanks for making it to the end of the video and thanks for hanging out. If you love this, make sure you like and share and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.